The 80s, 90s, noughties and now. Phuket's Live 89.5. Feel good.
Speaking of feel good, it's Saturday afternoon and welcome to the Going Green Show. I'm Nick Anthony. We're on show number 92. Thanks for being with us this afternoon, and I do hope you do have a fabulous weekend. There's a big storm coming through, so take care out there on the roads. It's going to be wet, going to be slippery, and we'll see an intensity in the storm running through till probably tomorrow lunchtime. So do take care out there on the roads. Now, big news this week was the International Panel for Climate Change document. It's part one of a three-part document, which is showing that catastrophic consequences to a continuing carbon-based economy. The BBC has a very simple little summary, which I'll play you in just a second, which is in 90 seconds really what this report means. But the report by the UN's climate panel details the physical evidence behind climate change. On the ground, in the air, in the oceans, global warming is unequivocal, it explained. It adds that a pause in global warming over the past 15 years is too short to reflect long-term trends. Later in the show, I'll talk about also why people who focus particularly on temperature are missing the trend line when it comes to this pause in global warming. Well, to contain the changes that will require substantial and sustained reductions of greenhouse gas emissions. And let's take a listen to BBC as they, in 1 second, come up with a short-form discussion on exactly what's going on. The BBC go on to say that be in no doubt that climate change is in fact real and dangerous. We saw comments overnight from a range of players, from John Kerry in the US to the British Prime Minister, David Cameron. We've seen comments in from all of the big NGOs, from IUCN, WWF, etc., talking about the impacts of this report. And indeed, it's basically on every front page of every major newspaper in the world overnight, and also on the front page of all of the leading websites. So from a positive perspective, this report has garnered a lot more interest than the previous report. Also the fact that the scientists have stated that now with 95% probability that humans indeed are the cause of global warming. This is the IPCC Climate Change Report in 90 seconds, courtesy of the BBC. Let's take a listen.
Considered the world's most authoritative assessment of climate change. This latest IPCC report has taken input from more than 800 experts, citing more than 9,000 scientific studies. It's published in three parts. The first, about the science of climate change, comes on Friday. The others, about the impacts and what can be done to mitigate it, follow next year. Since the last report, scientists have had 6 years to gather and examine more data and to refine computer models designed to project into the future.
That's good.
They'll draw on new data, including on the warming of our oceans. Ocean temperature monitoring has been revolutionised by a worldwide network of floating observatories called the Argo Network. Many scientists believe that atmospheric temperatures have been rising more slowly in recent years because more heat is being stored in the ocean. And since seawater expands as it warms, understanding this will enable scientists to better predict and plan for sea level rise. The panel will cite satellite imaging data to reveal how much ice on land and sea, particularly in the Arctic, is being lost. Other studies have been investigating evidence preserved in ancient ice, as well as in rocks and tree rings, to look into times in Earth's history when it was hotter than today. All of this new data is likely to make the IPCC more confident than ever that human activities are driving climate change. And this week, delegates from 195 countries will have the chance to review the report. So by Friday, we'll see to what extent governments agree with the findings.
Thanks to the BBC there. Damien Carrington is a fellow that we watch very closely on the Going Green Show. He's a writer for The Guardian newspaper in the UK. And his comments were quite succinct in that he says the new IPCC report, written in consensus by the world's climate experts and signed off in unison by the world's governments, may well be too timid. That is because it is a scientific document in which the confidence in climate knowledge and predictions are assessed. It's not a risk assessment. What critics choose to ignore is that all of the extra heat being trapped by our greenhouse gas emissions, which is equivalent to 4 Hiroshima nuclear bombs every second. Let me repeat that. Critics choose to ignore that all of the extra heat being trapped by our greenhouse gas emissions, which is equivalent to 4 Hiroshima nuclear bombs every second. Well, of that extra heat, only 1% ends up warming the air. So by choosing to focus on air temperatures, the critics of this climate change document are ignoring 99% of the problem. Are scientists certain that global warming has continued unabated over the last 15 years? Yes. In fact, the best satellite data we have shows that there is still more energy going into the climate system than is going out because of the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, says Ed Hawkins of the University of Reading. Another Reading scientist, William Collins, said that the climate has warmed over the last 10 years. The models are not wrong on the total heat being added. So where is all of this heat going? Damien Carrington says that 93% goes into the oceans, much of which were largely unmonitored until the 2000s. 3% goes into the land, and 3% into melting of the ice. Question for you. If there's a 10% chance of an aircraft crashing, would you not board it? But the IPCC classes that as very unlikely. Well, the IPCC report concludes there is a 50-50 chance that global temperatures will exceed 4 degrees centigrade this century if carbon emissions are not curbed. Such a rise would have catastrophic consequences. So if you're still feeling confused about all of this complex science, it all boils down to this. How lucky do you feel?
The 80s, 90s, noughties and now. Phuket's Live 89.5.
And a good afternoon. You're on the Going Green Show, show number 92 this afternoon. I'm talking about the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC as it's known. And they've just released a document yesterday showing unequivocally that humans are responsible for global warming. It's important for many reasons, but of course there's always the detractors, and there are the corporations that speak out against climate change and against the significance of these numbers, and also even the publishing of these numbers. Well, David Suzuki, who's a now 77-year-old environmentalist, has said that the IPCC has become ultra-conservative, indeed contaminated by corporate interests. Dr. Suzuki, who's visiting Australia this week, said that the IPCC generates important information, but the enormous pollution of the communication sphere has rendered it far less effective than at its inception almost a quarter of a century ago. Dr. Suzuki, 77, said civil society had a responsibility to demand science be made public. Elders, in particular, had a role to play since they had paid for their lifetimes with expensive lessons, and that they should share. I'm urging elders all over the world, get the hell off the golf course, get off the couch. This is the most important time in your life, he said. Damn it all, get out there and speak and tell the truth. That's from David Suzuki there in Australia. And of course, Australian repealing its carbon tax this week in very important international news at the same time as the IPCC comes out and says global warming is real, and indeed it is man-made. Somebody else who's been very outspoken against global warming and indeed been one of the leading advocates of it and the most outspoken has been Michael Mann. He gave an interview on Thursday about the IPCC document, and let's pick up halfway through that and listen to what Michael has to say. Michael Mann here on the IPCC document.
Mitigating climate change, doing something about our carbon emissions, is a planetary insurance policy. And in guiding the terms of that insurance policy, we need to be focusing on some of those potential more extreme, catastrophic outcomes. If the IPCC systematically downplays those outcomes, then it doesn't serve that larger process of societal risk assessment as it should. Qualitatively speaking, if you look at impacts on human health, water availability, human water resources, food resources, land, the global economy, pretty much every sector of our lives, of human civilization, what you see is a business as usual fossil fuel burning scenario by the end of the century gives us highly negative impacts across the boards in all those categories. I forgot to mention biodiversity, a potentially large scale extinction of species. Some of these we can quantify economically, or we can try to. Some of them we can't even qualify how important they are. What is the value of the Earth? Well, it's infinite, because if we destroy the Earth's environment, there is no plan B. There's no planet B that we can go to. How do you put a cost on the health of the environment? Arguably, you can't even do so. And in fact, it's that principle, that it's an infinite cost, when we start talking about those sorts of scenarios, that leads some people to conclude that the precautionary principle applies here, that the potential impact of what we're doing is so potentially harmful to us, to other living things, to the planet, that it's almost obvious that we need to mitigate this problem, that we need to take actions now to avert those catastrophic futures, potential futures.
Thanks very much there to Michael Mann, who had an exclusive interview there with Earth Focus, and that video courtesy of Link TV.
Phuket's Live 89.5.
And a very good afternoon. Welcome back to Going Green, show number 92. We've been talking about the IPCC climate change document that was released yesterday, indicating that humans are responsible almost unequivocally, that was a hard one to say, for climate change. Locally, we've been, of course, very busy here on Phuket in trying to clean up our island and trying to bring about a sustainable future. And last weekend was a International Coastal Cleanup Day at the same time and the same weekend as a Clean Up the World campaign, which was initiated out of Australia. Phuket got voluntarily involved in both of those, with well over 2,000 people involved in the beach cleanups and city cleanups around Phuket last weekend. And one article caught my eye over the week, talking about thousands of volunteers getting together in Manila Bay, of all places. For those of you that's been to Manila, and those of you that have ever walked along the foreshore, the image of that beach is about the filthiest that almost I've ever seen. It's certainly equivalent to any of the nasty photos you've seen of Bangladesh or India or parts of Indonesia, where you have horribly polluted rivers and horribly polluted communities. So my heart really went out to these guys, thousands of volunteers who gathered last weekend for the ICC Cleanup Day and tried to clean up Manila Bay. Well, they organized 4,000 volunteers, government units, private companies, schools, NGOs, and other volunteer groups, partnered with the Department of Environment in Manila and International Coastal Cleanup Philippines to organize the event. In particular, they went along the coast on Rojas Boulevard, which is the waterfront there in central Manila. They organized the collection of scientific data from what they collected. The database then showed what we've been doing also here on Phuket in terms of collecting information about marine debris that becomes a basis to help identify the sources of pollution, to raise awareness on the extent of the problem, change attitudes, and be able to influence policy making and improve programs on solid waste management. That pretty much summed up the attitudes and experience and strategy that last weekend's cleanup took place here on Phuket. And as I say, we did have a fantastic turnout, as I talked about last Saturday on the show with a number of interviews. Those interviews, if you missed it, are now on the internet, the podcast. You can go to YouTube and do a search for Going Green, or you can go to thephuketnews.com, click over to the radio section, and it's now up there on podcasts. That's about an hour long, and well worth listening to those interviews from the Going Green coordinators about what was picked up last week. Well, we're still in the middle, as you can see outside your car window, or if you're sitting at home, monsoon period is still in full force. We still have heavy westerly storms this week, which continue to bring ocean trash to our beaches. And even despite last weekend's fantastic cleanup, the storm this week and today will continue to bring that garbage back up. So it is an ongoing battle. It is a daily job. Phuket is amid a litter and trash crisis with increasing waste volumes. And despite positive change since 2010 on roadside litter reduction, we're still seeing in excess of 750 tonnes per day of garbage. The promotion of Phuket Green Island with the goals of a sustainable, low-carbon island strengthened over the last year as the local government, private businesses and individuals work together to reduce, reuse and recycle. Phuket's facing a crisis of overcapacity and many decades of over-exploitation. Natural area degradation and the need is now to aggressively pursue short and long-term goals to ensure Phuket is sustainable. Last weekend's Phuket, a Big Island cleanup as part of the Clean Up the World campaign, and also to celebrate the launch of Phuket's Magic Eyes litter campaign, saw over 300 people come together last Friday at Sapan Hin, and then in excess of a couple of thousand people on the beaches. Well, in terms of the total amount that was collected, we've got the figures in, and there were some fantastic cleanups. Katu Scouts and local administration with 60 people got 15 bags. The Phuket municipality in Sapan Hin picked up 30 bags with 300 people. In Nanyang, the Nanyang Green Group picked up 20 bags of waste with 100 people. There were 15 bags collected at Night On with around 70 people, thanks to Nick at CPRE and the Night On Green Club. Over on Layan, there was over 100 people, 40 bags of waste, thanks to the Layan crew from the Bangtao Green Club and Claudine, who organised that. On the middle of Bangtao, where the governor and the Mayor at the Chengtele Orbitor came to, around 18 bags of waste were collected and sorted with around 60 people, thanks to Natalie at the Dusit Laguna for coordinating that. In the south end of Bangtao, Cookie organised 60 people with the lifeguards. They collected over 15 bags of garbage and also recorded what was collected. Thanks to Phuket Marbella and the Ginny and the team over there who organised a big Surin cleanup with around 80 people. They collected around 14 bags of waste. Kamala Green Club had a fantastic turnout with 150 people, collected 40 bags of garbage, and that Green Club gets stronger and stronger, and helped in particular from having 2 full-time beach cleaners. Further south in Patong, 30 bags of waste were collected thanks to the Patong municipality that cleaned the south end Klong. On Karan Beach on the Saturday afternoon, 40 people joined a Go Eco cleanup, collected 40 bags of waste, over 100 kilos. Great effort there. And thanks very much to the Sub-Aqua dive team who coordinated that. Further south on Kata Beach, 20 bags of waste were collected in the afternoon on Friday and again on Saturday morning by the Kata Green Club and also by Crix Luther, who organised the Clean the Beach boot camp there on Kata Beach, 10 o'clock last Saturday morning. Governor joined that cleanup and was very much appreciated that he made the effort to go down and support Kata Beach in its clean initiative. And lastly, the other couple of areas where we got results back in were from the Tree Trang Beach, thanks to DMG and World Construction. 50 people cleaned that beach. And down in the south with Rawai, Growing Minds, a new small school, joined forces with a couple of local businesses to clean the Rawai Beach. And also over the week, Crix Luther from the Clean the Beach Boot Camp has announced that he's going to be setting up the Rawai Green Club. So all good news. Naihan, Chalong and Panwa also cleaned, but I don't have the numbers in. In total, last weekend, over 350 bags of trash were collected and counted at about 8 kilos per bag on average. That relates to about 2,800 kilos of garbage, or nearly 3 tons. It was a massive haul with huge support of all beaches. But just to put it into perspective, Phuket's trash is over 750 tons per day. 750 tons per day. So the total garbage collected was only about 3 or 4% of Phuket's total waste. So, in Australia, as they say, don't be a tosser. Think before you throw. Nick Anthony here on the Going Green Club. Hope you're having a great afternoon.
80s, 90s, noughties and now. Live 89.5.
And a very good afternoon. Ooh. I'm going to come back with that. That's the Cook. She moves in her own way, but we'll be back in a few minutes. We just had a 6 play here on 89.5. Do hope you enjoyed the music. Let's go back into some news for the week. I'm going to talk about some local Thai news on the environmental side. It's, of course, the Going Green show. One of the things we've been talking about is the IPCC climate change report, and the impact of that, of course, is rising sea levels, increasing flooding, and all sorts of other man-made problems, as the IPCC report now clearly shows. Well, locally, we've got flooding again in the north of Thailand. We've got a new storm today brewing in the China Sea, so more rain is forecast up north over the next 2 or 3 days. Heavy rains, which currently we're seeing in Khon Kaen and in Sisaket, for example. Massive flooding in Sisaket province, where my wife is from. Indeed, 21 of 22 districts have been hit by flooding. Situation there is beginning to stabilize, as also in Khon Kaen, where it's been flooding heavily. The area, the Mun River in the north of the Sisaket province was almost high, 4 meters higher than its banks on Friday morning, but the river is gradually dropping by about 2 centimeters per hour. So long as this rain is not too bad, we've probably seen the worst of this particular flooding. It doesn't look likely also that it's going to impact Bangkok in a major way. Speaking of Bangkok, last week there was an environmentalist whose name is Sasin Chalerm Lap, who walked 388 kilometers to protest a proposed dam project in the Mae Wong National Park. He has actually done much more than just spread his anti-dam messages. The message, of course, is that flooding will inundate 13,000 arai of forest, which is about 5,000 acres of forest. The Secretary General of the conservation group, Serb Nakasatian Foundation, may have given a spark of new life to the dormant environmental movement here in Thailand, and perhaps set in motion another historic change in this chaotic and divided society. The conservationists' Long March has already been spoken of as being the most significant phenomenon for the Thai environmental movement in decades. Not since the proposed construction of the Nam Choan Dam, which was in Kanchanaburi in 1986, has an environmental campaign galvanized such a huge following as the one that congregated at Bangkok's Art and Culture Centre last Sunday. Just like in the Nam Choan Dam protest, Mr. Sassin's walk has inspired support from a broad spectrum of society, fellow environmentalists, professionals, students, people in the arts, the media, and high as well as low society. Even a red shirt adherents could be seen mingling in what some have considered a yellow-tinted gathering. This is a report, I must add, written by Kun Wasant Tekat Wongtam, who's a former news editor of the Bangkok Post and was taken from the Bangkok Post. Well, when he started his walk from the national park in Nakhon Sawan, only 3 people accompanied him. But as the walk progressed, the small band gathered more and more followers. By the time he entered Bangkok's periphery on the 12th day, hundreds of people trailed behind, and on the 13th and last day, that number swelled to well over 1,000. He said that he wishes to thank the dam protesters for the love of forests and wildlife. But for me, he says, I love Thai people more. Forests can be created. Wildlife can be bred. But if the flood comes, there won't be Thai people and the nation cannot survive. Well, one of the ministers indeed then wanted to say that the government has made its decision. Mae Wong Dam will be built. There will be no change of heart. His quote was instantly picked up and spread like wildfire on social media, and no doubt it helped to make the decision for many people to join the Sunday rally even more important. Others concur but suggest that the environmental movement as a whole should grab the opportunity, while public interest in the issue has been rekindled to upscale what Mr. Sasson accomplished. They could join hands, even pool resources, to create campaigns that will address encompassing environmental issues as well as the social justice issue. An environmentalist writer said that the Thai environmental movement has lacked imagination and inspiration and been ineffective for far too long. Sassin put himself through a torturous campaign to prove that a campaign can be done effectively in different ways. Here on Phuket, our own environmentalists are standing up in their own way. They're gaining a stronger voice, they're gaining a clearer voice, they've got government support, and indeed the people of Phuket are starting to realize that nature matters and that natural beauty is what tourists come for, what tourists pay for, and what drives our own economy. Being environmentalists is something we all should and could do. We all have a voice. Just a matter of will you use it? This is Nick Anthony. You're listening to Going Green, show number 92.
Live 89.5, your island, your station.
And a good afternoon, Phuket. Nick Anthony back here on Going Green, show number 92. And Frankie Goes to Hollywood, very keen there to come in with a relax. We'll get back to you, Frankie. Let's take a look briefly at our local news. We've been talking about Thai environmentalism and how the new dam movement against that's the Mae Wong National Park Dam, which is planned up in the north of Thailand and will inundate over 13,000 row of forest. Long March last weekend with over 1,000 people really has revitalized the Thai environmental movement. And something else that's been happening has been an assault on our national parks, and in particular the wildlife of our national parks. The Department of National Parks, DNP, this last week announced plans to boost forest patrols and also boost its weaponry arsenal in a bid to battle wildlife poachers. The move was motivated by the loss of 2 forest rangers following a gun battle with tiger hunters in the eastern section of the Tax Tung Yai Narusawan Wildlife Sanctuary on September the 12th, earlier this month. That area covers 17 protected areas over 18,000 square kilometres wide, and it also includes the World Heritage Site, the Hua Ka Kiang Wildlife Sanctuary. Since 2009, amazingly, 42 forest rangers have been killed in Thailand and 48 injured. So DNP here having to arm up in the protection of wildlife. I read this week about Indian tiger protection and a very sad story how, in fact, cyber hackers have hacked into their databases and were able to retrieve the information for a GPS tracker that's lodged in a tiger. So the conservationists can follow it around this Indian National Park. But poachers are believed to have been able to access that data. And so the national parks have announced a very vigilant campaign from rangers to track this particular tiger even closer and to ensure it has the protection that it's going to need from poachers. Speaking also of protection, on the front page of this week's edition of the Phuket News, available on newsstands for 20 baht around the island. Do go grab yourself a copy. Lots of interesting stories in there. And on the front page is the row over the picture that Rihanna took when she was here the week before last on Phuket. And the picture, of course, was her with a slow loris. It's a protected animal. It's something that's being tried to be stamped out of the tourist network that are used as a photo prop. And indeed, in many ways, the picture that she took has sparked a lot of controversy, which is very good for the slow loris protection. And indeed, there is now a new slow loris protection movement coming out of this. Slow lorises are actually have venomous teeth, and they can be quite vicious. But to tame them, they actually grind down their teeth, or they pull out their teeth so that they don't become dangerous to people that take their photos. Of course, they're also nocturnal. They don't like the light. They don't like loud music. They don't like bright lights. They certainly don't like Patong. And we've seen since this photo was taken 3 raids on Patong, 3 people being arrested, and we do hope this continues. Slow lorises are a beautiful creature. There are 2 new slow loris groups that are looking to set up sanctuaries for them here on Phuket. And indeed, there is an open letter on the Phuket News website talking about how the slow low-risk protection needs Rihanna's support, and it's an open letter to her. I'm pleased to let Helen Thompson, the worker over there in the Gibbon Foundation who wrote that open letter to Rihanna, that I have passed that on to Rihanna's minders, and I don't know if we'll get a response, but at least I have passed it directly to them, and I'm sure that they will pass it on to Rihanna. So hopefully next Saturday we'll have an update on that and see if we get any pickup from Rihanna, and indeed any comments on what she would like to do and what she'd like to say. So we'll keep our eyes on Rihanna and the slow lorises. Nick Anthony back on with Going Green, show number 92. Let's take a quick look at some international news over the week. We've been talking a lot about waste reduction here on Phuket, indeed looking to follow the Scottish example of zero waste. During the week, I made contact with the team over at Zero Waste in Scotland, and they have indicated their support to Phuket to try and attempt to do a similar program. This week, Wales announced that it has met its first annual waste target by recycling more than half of the rubbish collected by its councils. Figures yet to be verified show that 52% of waste between April 2012 and March 2013 was either recycled or composted. Wales must now aim to meet a target of 58% set for 2015 and ultimately recycle 70% of its waste by 2025. An overarching objective is for Wales to become a zero-waste nation also by 2050. Alan Davies, who's the Minister for Natural Resource Food, said he was delighted at the figures. This is a real achievement and one that was born of hard work by local authorities and householders right across Wales. In Scotland, meanwhile, the most recent figures show that local authorities recycled and composted 38% of its municipal waste in 2000 and 2011. Although the recycling rates continue to improve in the 5 years before this, the speed of the increase has slowed down. Scotland's on its way to 70% waste recycling by 2025 and also has a zero waste target. In Northern Ireland, their current strategy is to recycle 40% by 2015 and going upwards from there. Phuket's strategy will take a similar approach. First will be curbside recycling, organised composting, clear waste strategies for e-waste, for toxic chemicals, and also for batteries, and there'll be local support in local communities. Phuket's got a long way to go, but we have good examples to follow. Talking about electric vehicles this week, there was the Frankfurt Motor Show over the last 2 weeks with a slew of new announcements on new hybrid and electric cars out of Europe's biggest car makers. Volkswagen in particular announced at Frankfurt its ambitious plans to offer as many 40 electric or hybrid vehicles, betting buyers will have enough confidence in performance to shift to low-emissions cars. Volkswagen will initially produce 14 models with alternative drives by next year and will widen the lineup should demand increase. The aggressive move by Volkswagen, which is just now bringing out its first alternative drive vehicles, echoes a broader shift taking place in the industry, with every major car maker for the first time in Frankfurt showing off electric or hybrid models. When the biennial gathering took place in 2011, only one hall at the show was dedicated to electromobility. Volkswagen 2 years ago said electric cars were lunacy. And of course, yesterday they've announced now that they are bringing out electrics, says Nissan Motor Company's Executive Vice President. We've been saying this for around 4 years now, and everybody's been giggling behind our back. It doesn't look so funny anymore. Still, the newfound enthusiasm for alternative drive engines hasn't translated yet into significant sales, amid consumers' concerns that powering systems offer only limited distance before a recharge is needed, and objections to higher prices. That's changing. Batteries getting better. Prices are coming down. We've seen lower tariffs for e-cars around the world. And indeed, it's people like Tesla that are starting to drive that change. Very good news. Also talking about hybrids, BMW announced its i8 hybrid at Frankfurt. Starting price there of $135,000 US, so it's no car for the masses. However, BMW is planning to offer one hybrid in every model line. cars with electromobility will make up 5 to 10% of the overall market from 2020, says BMW. Other alternative drive vehicles shown in Frankfurt include an all-electric Mercedes-Benz B-Class crossover that will use a drivetrain supplied by Tesla and a hybrid coupe prototype from Volvo. Also on Formula E, well, it's coming to Bangkok. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that I thought the relevancy of Formula One, and my apologies to the boys who had a show before the Going Green show. That is, of course, Box of Neutrals, our very own Formula One show. I've been talking about how it's losing its relevancy as a fuel-based racing car circuit. Indeed, Formula E, the electric car Formula One competitor, is coming to Bangkok, and it'll leave an electric car grid as part of tech transfer to its host nations. If you want to know more about that, you can go to FIAFormulaE.com. And that about wraps up the news for the week on the international front. Stay tuned in a moment, and I'll make a wrap on local news and sign you off for your Saturday afternoon. Of course, Fleetwood Mac there with Dreams, amazing song. We also here on Phuket have our own dreams, and that is for a clean and green Phuket Island. And of course, it comes down to all of us to make those changes. So do reflect, think about your actions, refuse single-use plastic bags, straws and polystyrene, reduce your waste, reduce energy use, reuse what you can, including composting, and recycle as much of what's left as possible. Be responsible to Phuket, and be responsible to our planet. Our world is at a fork in the road. We're at a crossroads, and it's really for us to decide. The loss of the enormous contribution of fossil fuels means that the total amount of energy available to humanity by the end of this century may be less than 1/5 of the amount we use now, and less than 1/6 of the amount that we will use at our energy peak a decade from now. The advance of science has enabled us to measure our impact upon the planet with increasing precision. So why are we ignoring all of the science? Will our intelligence, in the end, count for nothing? Are we destined, like the elephants, tigers, and rhinos, for extinction? Are we to become the ultimate victim of our own success? And if so, when the last human falls, centuries or millennia hence, will there be anyone there to hear it? Survival or extinction? Seek for a better world. You can see the comments from today and the transcript from today's show at myseek.org. Head over to the radio section, and all the links are there, as well as the YouTube videos from today. You can also follow me on Twitter. You can go to Twitter and follow me at Indigo Nick. And if you go to Facebook, you'll find now green clubs for Nayang Beach, Naiton Beach, Bangtao, Kamala, Kata, and Kata Noi. And over the next month, there'll be information about green club meetings in Patong, in Karon, and also down in Rawai, as well as a big one that will be at the end of the month up at Mai Khao. So Phuket about to get all of its green clubs, which is really fantastic news. Do take care out there on the roads. I can hear and see the rain coming down again. Turn on your lights. If it's very heavy, pull over to the side of the road and give it 5-10 minutes. It usually passes fairly quickly. Although this westerly storm is likely to stay through the weekend, and as I said earlier, we're looking at increasing wind speeds tomorrow morning to perhaps 22 to 24 knots. So this storm is likely to intensify before it goes away out on Monday or Tuesday. Thanks very much for listening to the Going Green show today. I do hope you enjoyed it. I do hope you learned something, and I do hope you'll join us all in a big effort to clean up Phuket and to ensure that we have sustainability. Coming up next is the best of breakfast with Sam and Kirsty. If you missed their early morning antics, you can catch it all here as a replay on Saturday afternoons. There's the Asian Pop 40, a new show from 6 till 9 p.m, turning out some of the new songs. Saturday Night Fever, get you boogieing, get you organised for tonight, 9 p.m. through till midnight. And then we have non-stop music through to a replay of the Asian Pop 40 show tomorrow morning from 9 till 12. Weekend Brunch, Jason will be on tomorrow from 12 till 3. Speaking of Jason, you can catch him this afternoon as a DJ this evening, up at Mai Khao Dream Resort and Spa. That's up at Natai Beach, over the bridge. So go past the airport, Go over the bridge, and about 3 kilometers on the left-hand side, you take a left, head down to the beach, and follow it up to Maikau Dream Resort and Spa. They're reopening their Firefly Bar today, and so there'll be a DJ night of stylish cocktails with its unique beachside charm. After Jason's weekend brunch tomorrow, we'll have a replay of the Phuket News Radio 3 to 4, talking about this weekend's edition of the Phuket News. Mellow Moments with Andy Saunders from 4 till 6. Sunday Night Chill from 6 till 9 p.m. tomorrow evening, followed by music, and we're back again to Monday morning. Do have a fantastic weekend, a great Saturday evening. Take care out there on the roads, and keep Phuket clean and green.